Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to our examiner. I am the first presenter. My name is AMANINA Binti ABDUL MUNAF. Our research title is Training Effectiveness Among Staff in INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah. The first, I would like to touch on the background of study. Basically, the success of any organization depends on the success of any training experience or attended by employees. This is because the smooth running of a job in organization rests with management skill of each employee and not just in the hands of the employers. In this context, training effectiveness can be defined as a measure of the match between the training goals and the outcome. Effective training results in positive learning outcome, while ineffective training results in negative learning outcomes. Generally, Malaysia government encourage the public servants to attend the training, even though the training effectiveness has a positive and negative outcome. This is because the work environment within the organization support the transmittal of training to the workplace, since it is important to realize through the support of the management and the employees' opportunity to use the content of the training received within the training programs. According to research done by Dania and Aziz, show that the higher the level of training effectiveness, the more difficulties, complexities, expenses to measure the training effectiveness in the public sector. In this matter, this can be crucial because training does not always promise a good outcome for a few trainees to tend to urge bored, lack of impatience, frustration, and lack of satisfaction. Therefore, this study chose INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah as our research area and to know the extent of training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah. The second is I would like to explain on the problem statement of this study. Training effectiveness is a great challenge in an organization. Most organizations fail to understand that training effectiveness may give an impact to the organization. In Malaysia case, there is a lot of associations more that do not lead preparing program due to certain reasons, including absence of aptitude and costs, and some notification a general understanding that absence of comprehension of preparing needs, appraisal, and preparing assessment ruins human resource development activities in that specific nation, and this may lead to lack of training effectiveness. Other than that, previous studies shown that effective training can enhance employees' performance and supports this view by observing that effective training encourages performance. Based on the previous study on the training of civil servant costs on senior management, the study concluded that staff perception of course was negative as viewed it only to requirement of a promotion. Those who attended the course merely wanted to meet the requirement as provided in the scheme of service to get a promotion. Besides, inadequate training also may be a barrier to successful of a training effectiveness. This can be seen in the New Straits Times mentioned that being efficient and effective but without being accountable to stakeholders may lead to less optimal results or even disaster. This is where many civil servants' training is inadequate. The old paradigm of the public administration focus on efficiency and effectiveness still prevails. Therefore, based on the above issues, this study will examine the factors that contribute towards training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah. Among the factors are knowledge application, skills application, and peers relationship. Next, we move to the research question. There are 5 research questions that develop to better understanding on the training effectiveness. The first is, what is the extent of training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah? The second is, what is the relationship between the knowledge application and training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah? The third is, what is the relationship between skills application and training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah? The fourth is, what is the relationship between peer relationship and training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah? And the fifth is, what is the most dominant factor contributing to training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani, Kedah? Then, we move to the research objective of this study. There are 5 research objectives of this study. The first is to know the extent of training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. The second is to study the relationship between knowledge application and training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. The third is to examine the relationship between skills applications and training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. Fourth is to examine the relationship between peer relationships and training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. The fifth is to identify the most dominant factor contributing to training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. We move to the conceptual framework of this study. The conceptual framework is connected with the ideas, experimental research, and significant hypotheses applied in accelerating and organizing the knowledge provided by the researcher. The pictures has indicates the conceptual framework of training effectiveness, whereby it shows the relationship between the independent variables and dependent variables. Independent variable consists of knowledge application, skills applications, and peer relationship, while dependent variable is training effectiveness. So we want to know whether the independent variables has the relationship with dependent variables.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Asyiqin Binti Shamsudin. Okay, now let's move to the discussions. Okay, we move to the next part, which is research methodology. So the research design that has been used in this study is a quantitative method. Okay, next is units of analysis. As we know that we have conducted our research in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah, and thus the unit of analysis involving all the staff that have in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. Okay, next we move to the sample size. Sample size are reflected to the number of response that will be received by the researcher, and it is not based on the questionnaire that will be issued. So in this study, the sample size that we use is 50, which means that 50 staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah will be selected to answer our question. In this study, the sampling technique that being used is census sampling, which means that it involves all the representatives of the population that has been observed. Therefore, the census sampling is being used in order to know and to observe all the population in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah regarding to the training effectiveness among the staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. Besides that, the data collection method that has been used in this study is questionnaire, which it means that the questionnaire will be set up and will be distributed to the staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. The most of the respondents are come from the female group, which is 37 out of 50, which the percent of 74%, whereas the male have the frequency of 13 and has the percentage of 26 out of 100. We move on to the next part, which is the age. Throughout the list, it can be seen that most of the staff are come from the group of 35 to 44 years old, which it brings to the percentage of 56%. And the least number of the respondents they answered is come from the age of 25 to 34, which is consists of 6%. And for the marital status, it can be seen that all the staff that involved and answered the questionnaire are from the married status, which is consists of 88% out of 100, whereas the least number of the marital status is from the single group, which is consists of 2%. Regarding to the races, we can be seen that most of the respondents are coming from the Malay races, which is consists of 98%, and means that out of 50 number of the respondents, there are 49 numbers of staff that are come from the Malay races, whereas the 1% frequency is come from the other races. To know the relationship between training effectiveness and knowledge application, so the R value that has been collected is 0.885, and the P value is smaller than 0.05, and thus the H alternate is accepted, where it is stated that there is a significant relationship between the training effectiveness and knowledge application in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. The second variable is regarding on relationship between training effectiveness and skill applications. It can be seen that the R value that has been collected is 0.851, and the P value is smaller than 0.05, and the H alternate is also accepted, where there is a significant value and there is a significant relationship between training effectiveness and skill application in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. The last variable that will be tested is relationship between training effectiveness and peers relationship. In this variable, it can be seen that the R value that has been collected is 0.793 and the P value is smaller than 0.05, and the H alternate is also be accepted since there is a significant relationship between training effectiveness and peer relationship in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. To identify the most dominant factor that contribute to the training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. So, the result of regression analysis has been selected where the knowledge applications consist of 0.720, skill applications bring up to 0.221, and last one is peer relationship, which is negative 0.183. So, based on the result, it has been stated that all the independent variables are explained 79.3% of the variance R squared in the training effectiveness, which is highly significant of the F value of 58.769 in the table. And examinations of T value indicates that the knowledge applications are the most contribute to the training effectiveness in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah, which consists of the value of 3.854. In this study, the limitations can be seen that the data cannot be generalized to other public sector. This is because the data that has been collected, the data was being collected in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah, and the other public sector that also providing the similar training cannot simply access the data. Two recommendations that can be suggested, which is the first one is widen up the scope of the study. This is because the study is just focusing on the training effectiveness in one organization only, which means it is only focused on INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah. It would be quite interesting if the researcher or the future researcher can expand the researcher reach in the can expand to more than one organizations. It is also been suggested for the next researcher, for the future researcher, to have a different form of organizations that also give the training to their staff, and by providing this kind of different type of organizations, perhaps that the potential researcher will be able to make a comparison of the level of training effectiveness that has been provided or that has been attended by them. They also can be decide whether there is a difference between these organizations and the other organizations. And the second suggestions would be the scope, the mixed method of the survey. It is suggested for the future researcher or the next researcher to have a qualitative and quantitative method for the future research. This is because by having the mixed method of survey, it can be more comprehensive regarding to the training effectiveness, or more comprehensive regarding to the data that has been collected. When or if the researcher only focusing on the quantitative research design, the data that has been collected is only through the questionnaire. So instead of using the questionnaire, it is suggested to have a mixed method survey for the future research. By using both methods, it will provide such an opportunity for more in-depth and clarification on how success of the training can be demonstrated by the performance at work. The conclusions, and it can be said that from the result that has been obtained, all the variable has a significant relationship between training effectiveness and knowledge application, training effectiveness and skill applications, and training effectiveness and peer relationship. Out of these variables, it can be said that knowledge applications can be said that knowledge application is the most dominant factor that contribute to the training effectiveness among staff in INTAN Sungai Petani Kedah.